Transportation Department says a private firm may be awarded the contract to operate the Ninoy Aquino International Airport early next year.
By first quarter next year, we must be able to award or to select the winning bidder and then magsisimula na siya. Or if all of the processes ay walang hitches, then USEC sees na by first quarter of next year when an airport is privatized, you are not given 100% pwede mong gawin ang lahat ng gusto mong gawin.
The country's socio-economic managers or economic managers touted the Maharlika Investment Fund once again, this time around before businessmen in Singapore.
There's no other way of improving the quality of employment than getting a major push in the investment.
The fund has to earn money. So you have short-term, long-term investments, and we propose to create several sub-funds, infrastructure fund, maybe green fund, and so forth and so on.
The Marcos administration is putting in place one campaign after another in a bid to ease the country's tight fiscal position. Among others, there's the Maharlika Investment Fund, the privatization of the Ninoy Aquino International Airport, and then the Philippine Export Development Plan. What do businessmen think of these programs? We asked them in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to The Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay. Kasama po natin ngayon Ed Lingao of One News and si Ami Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief po ng Philippine Star. Chiefs, good evening.
Good evening.
Magandang gabi.
Anong balita, Ami?
Well, hanggang ngayon pinag-uusapan pa rin natin, di ba? No? We're stuck with him, sabi ni President Marcos.
Yung ba ang words niya? Hindi naman yun ang
I
words
don't think
niya.
you put it naman that way.
Yeah, but we're talking about, not about the presidency, of course.
Yes.
We're talking about the
position.
Agriculture Secretary position.
Not about the presidency.
We're talking about the agriculture, because malaki yung mga balita recently, di ba? Parang we have defense
Oo,
finally, we have
Health.
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 Yeah.
Pero yung agriculture was glaring. Pero this week, the main quote was basically, they
No
want me...
takers.
No volunteers, sabi niya.
No volunteers.
No volunteers.
Ah.
And they, I don't know who he was referring to, but he said, they want me to stay on.
Hindi, sabi daw he's referring to the cabinet.
I see.
Oo. Sinabi daw niya mag-volunteer naman, baka naman pwedeng may mag-volunteer sa inyo.
Sa cabinet.
Ang daming mga quote na hindi ko narinig. But syempre, yan lang isa sa mga pinag-uusapan natin. Of course, among other things, we're heading into the first anniversary of the Marcos presidency. So we're assessing a lot of things. Pero tsaka sunod-sunod talaga itong mga, as we said, Maharlika Investment Fund, among others.
And ayan na nga, tuloy-tuloy ang problema sa airport and the proposal to privatize. Yan, ewan ko.
Yeah,
Ikaw,
what is
madalas
this?
ka mag-travel Kumusta
Oh,
ba
but I know-
experience mo sa airport?
At least yun, yung balita na ipa-privatize, I know a lot of people who welcome that as, well, at least that sounds like good news. I don't know, di ba?
Pero yun nga, it's sometimes hit or miss. Like there was a slew of privatizations sa panahon ni Ramos.
Yes.
Some of them worked, some of them did not.
Ayan na nga ang ending ng
Oo.
privatization na
Oo.
yun. Yan ang problema.
Yeah, but at the same time, one thing I think that can be said, we can ask this later, among other things, when the president says something he finally needs to get done, di ba, in the case of the MUP,
Yes.
di ba? Pinagpasa-pasa yan. People are giving him credit na, well, on the one hand, at least you have a president now who's really, biting the bullet on this. Maybe privatization is one of these things.
Could be. Yeah, let's ask our guests for
Sige,
tonight.
pag-usapan natin. Next up, we are bringing in our guest into the conversation, but after a quick break. The Chiefs will be right back.
And joining our discussion tonight, Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry President George Barcelon and Go Negosyo founder Joey Concepcion. Mr. Concepcion is also part of the Private Sector Advisory Council and the DTI's MSME Development Council. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome back to the Chiefs.
Good evening, Ann, Ed, and Robbie.
Magandang gabi po.
Magandang gabi po. Sa inyong
Good
lahat.
evening po. Thank you for
Good
joining us again. Well, sir, let's start off with that. Yung NAIA, some see that as good news given all the problems we've been having sa NAIA. Parating nagba-brown out for some reason. Pero ingay, some people are also saying, panahon ni Ramos, we had a slew of privatizations. Some of them appear to have worked, and some of them are being heavily criticized now. Do you think this is the solution to NAIA's problem? Anyone, sir?
Well, as far as the retrofitting of our NAIA, that has been discussed way back in the previous administration. And about knowing the need of that, it's very necessary, especially when we are focusing the travel business, tourism business. So the proposal that is put forth now, I think is still under discussion, pending the number of years of concession. But on the private sector side, I think it's much needed. It's been quite a long time that the NAIA needs to be renovated.
Mr. Concepcion, sir.
Yes, when I was with the Duterte administration, in fact, I was the one who formed the first consortium with the Zabels and the Razons, etc. At that time, we were in discussion with Secretary Tugade, and we almost were able to get the group to be the proponents of the rehabilitation of NAIA. I've just recently used the airport. It's about time. I mean, I think we just have quite a number of tourist arrivals already happening, and this airport cannot take the volume. No? So the last experience of this tourists of ours is not going to be a good experience because the wait is as long as 3 hours if you hit the peak time. No? So this is an urgent matter, and I think it has to be done. Secretary Bautista is pushing for it, and I think it is what we have to do to spur tourism, to spur investors to come to the Philippines. No, I mean, their first experience is very important.
But Mr. Concepcion, as you said, obviously you are for this. As you said, you were involved in the earlier consortiums, but there were many efforts before to privatize NAIA. In particular, there were many offers, a number of Swiss challenges, and then it always falls apart, notwithstanding statements and directions. As they always say, the devil is in the details. I'm not even talking about the airport yet or the design, but just in the process of finally getting it to getting privatized. Where is the devil hiding in these things where things like this tend to fall apart before becoming reality?
Well, during the time of President Duterte, that was a major move in the sense that, that administration lacked time. No? Under the current president today, President Marcos, he's just beginning his presidency. No? So there's a lot of time, and I think the urgency it's even worse today. No, I mean I've not seen it this bad, which is good and bad in a sense. You see a huge influx of tourists coming out. And if you look at the number of people that are falling in line, there's a lot of tourists there. No? So I think the urgency is there. I think this administration is well aware that we have to grow our economy, and the best way to do it is grow our tourism sector, which is we have the best beaches in the world, and we have the most friendliest people in the world. So let's take advantage of this. The momentum is there, and you can see it. I can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to build more cubicles for the immigration side now as you exit. So they're starting to build. So the privatization is going to take time. How many years? 3 years to do this whole airport. So in the meantime, there has to be stopgap measures now that have to be done. And the critical point is forget the runway first. No, it's just getting out of that airport through the immigration. Let's make it easy for them. And the quickest way is to expand the cubicles, maybe double it if possible. I don't know. They're starting to do it, but they will need more space now.
Well, Mr. Bautista has told us that their idea of privatization is only for the management, not the structure
Not the
itself,
structure.
not for the development of the structure. You think that's a good idea? Because we also talked to the former MIAA chief, and he was saying medyo mahina yung control nila with all the other agencies involved in running the airport, no? Including, of course, Bureau of Immigration, Bureau of Customs, the security aspect. So, kung sakasakaling matuloy itong privatization, you think there is, ano yung hihingin dapat? Any conditionalities that you want? Kahit yung management lang, by way of
react to that.
management.
Or parameters.
But primarily, I think to improve the service, they have to really shift to a more digital platform. You look at other countries, through the immigration, they're so fast, no, using digital equipment. And I think that can be done, and that improvement in the digital platform, I'm sure it would give us double-digit speed, faster, no, speed. And the other side of the equation is that, running an airport, there's the equation on the other side is the commercial space. The more tourists you come, the more they shop in the airport. The recovery rate for the investors or the consortium would be faster. I do hope, of course, that 15 years was the number that was being discussed even before, and there was some hesitancy because they find it's too short. But it's an ongoing airport. They're not starting from square one. It's ongoing, and they have the space, no? And that's what Mr. Concepcion was saying. The more tourists that they come, there's more volume, not only in the airport operation, but on the commercial side of it.
Pero yun nga, sir, maybe you could give us some idea, just more on about the process, because to your point about let's invest in technology, let's shift to digital. My passport is readable. It can be read by a machine. And then on the immigration side, we have the e-travel QR codes. So people already feel that, okay, this is already digital. Obviously, this is not your project. The accountability is not to you. But as businessmen and as people who look at processes, maybe you could give us some insight on where does it break down in the Philippines, notwithstanding that we seem to have shifted to digital. We seem to have every component there is, even in Changi Airport. But for some reason, pagdating dito sa atin, yung digital nagiging manual pa rin. Process-wise, what is your own observation of what's happening? Not just in NAIA, we have so many examples of this.
Well, Robbie, I'm only talking from my experience when I visit other countries, no? And of course, there are, like I just came back from the States, sometimes like even in Los Angeles Airport, mahaba rin ang pila, when all the planes arrive at the same time. But like in Hong Kong, they have that frequent visitors ID. And a lot of people visit Hong Kong, and that really facilitates. For us, if we can implement something like that also, that would really help a lot. But of course, beefing up our identification system in the airport, and for people who register, who register for the e-travel. As of now, you're just registering your flight, your name, but there's no photo. I'm just wondering whether down the line they should have the photo of the passenger, so there's automatic facial recognition. Kaya paglabas mabilis na. They recognize the face, and then you have the QR code that's attached to the e-travel. I'm sure there are ways of doing this, no? Just sometimes maybe we have not really gone through the process of studying that process. If you go to the States, even leaving the country, you don't even have to go through the immigration. You go in, they check you, they stump you, but if you're leaving, there's nothing. Of course, we cannot simplify it to that extent, but really through the implementation of new digital platform, I would think that we can increase the speed probably by double digits, maybe 15 to 20%. That's my take. No?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barcelon, let me zoom into something you mentioned a while ago. You were talking about the commercial establishments in the airport. Let me also point out one thing. Kasi for a lot of people who do go to the airport, parang lahat ng bibili mo sa airport, napakamahal, tapos hindi masarap. I mean, and for a long time, I don't know now, pero for a long time, laki rin ng problema when it comes to yung taxi service dun sa airport. Parang you're forced to use a taxi service regardless of whether or not it works or whether or not they're making too much money on you. I don't know how much that has changed. Pero generally the perception was, for the longest time, na there are favored businessmen who make a killing in the airport dun sa commercial establishments. How do you think this, if at all, will solve that problem?
For visitors coming to the country, the first impression they get is really from the airport. So the airport must be beautified, and must be very efficient. Like recently, we went to attend the ASEAN event in Labuan Bajo. It's a small place in outside further down Bali, and you can see the airport is much so advanced. They're using very big LED screen upon arrival, and from the screen you're already seeing some of the scenic spots that they're promoting. So we should really improve the image of NAIA, and I think the private sector, especially those in the consortium, they run a mall, they run commercial areas, and I think they would have they have a good touch to it, no? When they can really maximize on their investment through the commercial. Like if one were to visit Singapore, they keep on expanding their terminal, but if you notice, they're even expanding the commercial area faster than the terminal, because there's a market for they can generate a lot of revenue on that aspect.
Well, sir, let me just give you an example. Sa airport ako nakita ng pinakamahal na lugaw sa ng buhay ko. And you'd expect something like that siguro if you get real good service, because the concessionaires are paying premium for that. But parang hindi. Parang you're just a captured market. And diba, as a commuter, you'd want to have a good trade-off as far as your pesos and dollars are concerned.
And this is where the privatizing of the NAIA would help. I mean, for people who put in good money, they expect to recover, no? And as I said, that the Department of Tourism and the private sector can really join hand in this. Again, as I said earlier, the impression of the airport and from the airport to the hotel is very crucial, very important. Like us, we travel a lot, and we're always impressed when the airport is well run, clean, and availability of different items that you can purchase, or different restaurants that you can eat. So there's really that big commercial aspect in running an airport.
Mr. Concepcion, are you okay with privatizing only the management aspect of the airport? Because our idea of a successful privatized airport is Mactan. And we understand that's not just management, but the entire structure was changed, di ba?
Well, you have to do this in stages, okay? What is the problem today? It's leaving and arriving. That's the problem. And I'm in Madrid right now, and it took us 30 seconds just to clear when your exit, your immigration. So it's very easy. Many other countries are that, and George is correct that we have to really digitalize. Now, do we do an overhaul overnight? No, we shouldn't do that. It's going to be a mess. We have only one huge airport, that's NAIA 3. Now, what should we focus? It's just in the exit and in the entrance to this country. Simple as that. Let's focus on digitalizing, because when I hand over my passport to the immigration officer in arrival, he just swiped it through, and that was it, and we left. Here you have to go through a whole process. No? So right now, I know there are other concerns with this airport, the very expensive, the food quality, etc. I'd forget about that, because anyway, what's important is the lasting impression of a tourist is is it fun to arrive in the Philippines? No, so definitely it's not. No, so what we have to do now is to just focus on that problem, and in the process, whether you fully privatize the airport or you partially privatize it in terms of management, I would just go first for management at this point in time rather than the whole thing, because that's going to be a major job. No? So that will take years. So are they going to demolish NAIA? Are they going to do major renovation? Let's focus first on the quick service upon arrival and upon the departure. If we're able to do that, then we solve a big part of that problem.
Are there any positive takeaways from the success of Mactan's privatization that we can apply quickly to NAIA's improvement?
Definitely, it's basically a new airport. So Mega Wide was the one who did that construction. So they did it perfectly well. The systems are there. You arrive in Cebu, there's no problem. So, but for us to get to this airport, I mean, NAIA 3, that's huge, no? Much bigger than the Cebu airport. So to me, let's just focus on where the pain point is. It's upon departure and arrival. No? Let's solve that first. And the private sector, assuming they do take the management contract for NAIA 3, I'm sure that's where they will focus. You can solve it, as George was saying. Let's digitalize it, because you can't get out in 30 seconds without digitalizing. No? So let's work on that. And let's add more stations. No? Right now they're doing that, but they will soon lack space because there's not enough. So they'll have to figure out, maybe they'll have to demolish some of the restaurants to put more space. To me, I'd get rid of some of the restaurants there just to create more space.
Okay. Sir, change topic naman tayo. As we said, we're keeping everything in the context, of course, of our economy and business, but also in the first year of the Marcos administration. One of the biggest programs, of course, also most controversial that people have been talking about, Maharlika Investment Fund. Your thoughts on this, sir? How would you characterize this fund? Is it clear to you what the mandate is? Do you have any concerns?
George?
You know, the Maharlika Fund has been discussed. I think during the early stage, it started on the wrong footing because the money would be coming from pension funds, GSIS and SSS. And of course, there were a lot of different sectors of society that calls a concern that you cannot touch on that, because if you lose money, who's answerable? And both lower house and the upper house, they've done due diligence, and they've studied, what are the ramifications that's needed. And I noticed that in the Senate version, this ramification is to make sure that the fund is properly managed, properly represented by those sectors that will benefit from the earnings of the fund. But I think they have to be more specific regarding, exactly what kind of investment they will put in, and those who will benefit from it. There has been talked about spending more for infrastructure. Nobody can argue with that. There's been a discussion that money will be put into agri-sector again. It's one of the top of mind areas that we need to invest. There's also that aspect of health and education. So with that amount of investment in the meantime, it's not exactly very big. It's not exactly like Indonesia when they started their sovereign investment fund. It was at the height of the resource base generating lots of income for them when coal price was sky high and also nickel. So they had the advantage. They had the benefit of that source of fund, but not in our case. So they have to be very specific on how they define the fund, how it should be used, and where the funds can be obtained. Other funds like the Saudi Arabian funds, or some of the well-known funds, they're big enough and they have that credibility. And actually, foreign funds also invest in them. Of course, we hope that having started this MIF, down the line, the track record will be good, wherein they can even attract foreign investors to the fund. As of now, it's as I said, even though the Senate has passed their version, there's still some issues, with some of the key senators about the safeguard. So, like them, we know that this is a fund really to help some of the areas that needs to be helped. But on the flip side, the government has to make sure that the money is well placed, well managed, for really to realize those benefits. That's all.
Yeah, Mr.
Maybe I
President.
can add to that.
Yeah.
For example, I don't think there's really anything wrong with having the Maharlika Investment Fund. Many countries have the same. If you look at it, the private sector is investing in the country. What do they see? Opportunity. It's all about getting the right people to run the fund. If you look at the infrastructure projects San Miguel and MVP has gotten, they're not going to invest in those infrastructure projects if they will lose money. So these are long-term investments, and I think when we sold Transco many, many years ago, today we must be regretting that we sold Transco. It's a cash cow. So I believe that the government should make investments in major projects that are critical to our country. And the returns are very clear. The private sector has benefited from all of this infrastructure. Of course, they did an excellent job. So, like Manila Bay, I said this many months earlier. Look at the opportunity. How many developers are reclaiming the Manila Bay? How much will that be in the future? A lot of money. What was the land where Mall of Asia and all of these Conrad and casinos are today? Huge valuation increase in real estate. So these are now invested, I'm told, by 5 big contractors who are now developing reclaiming the Manila Bay. So that is an opportunity. If we had the fund, the government could, the fund could have invested there, and that's a sure win, especially if you partner with the private sector.
Okay, well, certainly, sir, a lot more to talk about with regard to Maharlika. I'm sure we will be going back to Maharlika after the break, but please do stay with us. We will be right back.
Welcome back. Still with us, Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry President George Barcelon and Go Negosyo founder Joey Concepcion. Mr. Barcelon, at this point, meron na bang clarity actually to you as far as the bill is concerned at this point? Kung ano siya, the nature of the Maharlika Investment Fund, its objectives, where it can be invested or who can invest?
Well, as I said earlier, the Senate has done some vetting, and some of the areas that were not clear. I think this has been corrected and made more specific. Something like this is like any business. When you can't have everything black and white. There's always some risk involved, and if the intention, I think the intention definitely is that we need more, government needs to generate more fund. And one of the areas that has been discussed about is the MUP, the pension fund. So I don't think that this will address that right away. But the putting is really having the right people, the right setup, and the right safeguard. Again, it's like earlier we were talking about this airport, and then you have a consortium that wants to do it. They don't have all the playbook right away of how to run that investment. But in the same light, that they're also discussing with, I'm sure discussing with the government especially in the Department of Tourism. What is the department doing to bring more tourists? They cannot just do it alone. That okay, I'm going to renovate the airport, but where's the tourists? How do you promote them to come? So, same thing. I look at the Maharlika Fund is that the idea is noble. We don't have all the the playbook. It's being discussed, which is good. Now it's being discussed openly, pros and cons. But the benefit of whatever funds that generated from this investment would be able to benefit some of the sectors that really requires more help.
But to both of you, sirs, where things need clarifying, whether it's the management or the strategy or the safeguards, where those questions remain, where should that be addressed? Should that be addressed still in the law before it is finally signed? Or should we just leave it and then let management, future management, take care of those questions?
Well, what I've read now, yeah, go ahead, Joey.
My view there is just to, I'm very sure that once this is approved, the board composition is going to be quite critical. And, the private sector, if you have quite a number of people in the private sector, rest assured that, especially if they have the wealth of experience, the probability of a fund succeeding is high. Of course, transparency is very important so that you have the trust of the people. The fund should not be just for the Philippine government. They eventually can open this fund to the public down the road. So I think the concern really here is, question is who is going to manage this fund. So if bulk of these people really come from the private sector, then with the wealth of experience, then the confidence of the people will be there, definitely.
Pero sir, to that point, I think almost all of the board members are going to be appointed by the president, if not ex officio, at least appointees of the president. How does that play into the whole thing? I mean, if you look at other investment funds or other wealth funds, you have a heady mix. A lot of them from the private sector directly, some of them controlled by the private sector as well.
Yes, but the president, President Marcos, is really working with the private sector. He created the private sector advisory councils. I mean, that is a huge step. That is an acknowledgement of the value that he puts on the private sector. So I believe that the composition of this board will be from the private sector, and of course, people from government who have excellent track records. And there's a number of them I can mention, but we have a lot of experienced bankers, investment managers who've gone through this, and I'm certain that if this fund is open to the public, definitely I would love to invest in this fund.
Mr. Barcelon, what's the sentiment in the private sector about tapping the BSP reserves for the Maharlika? Because a lot of concern has been raised about this aspect of the proposal.
Well, and this, it's being discussed openly, and I think that's good. Some of the concern has been addressed. As I said, I don't think we can say that we have a manual that would be used. Of course, during times, challenging times, uncertainty, even Norway, one of the biggest MIF fund, due to the uncertainty and nobody expected about this geopolitical issue in Europe, they took a beating also. Okay. But nevertheless, there are private funds that are still doing very well, wherein they have the informations, or they are well looked into what's happening in the world, and they are still making good return for their investors. The appointment of, let's say, from the government side, like the chairman of GSIS or SSS, these are all appointed by the president or by the agency like Department of Finance, and I'm sure that they know the weight that would be on their shoulder to run such a important agency. But it must be a combination, no? Selected from the sectors that are involved to be part of the management. And even before this materialized, I would like to think that the government is already getting more feedback, no, from the sectors or from the possible candidates, and see whether they would fit into that role, and whether they're willing to take that responsibility. Because as per the way it's crafted, pag nalugi yung ano, or you're found negligence to your job, may penalty. Okay, so anybody who wants to sit there must be a bit take cognizance that there's huge responsibility in running this investment fund.
If we could ask you, sir, as businessmen, as potential investors, we've spoken to some analysts, and they said, we've spoken to two kinds of people. One would say, syempre, para sa Pilipinas, I see the need for development, I see the need for infrastructure, I like it, I believe in it, and I can see people investing in that. And then there are people who say, frankly, I don't know what I'm investing in. We've been asking government, what's the strategy? Where's the list? What's the development plan? How do you expect us to invest in something when nothing is clear? How would you assess it? If we had the fund right now, and government had that call, come invest in the Philippines, we're open for business, how would you assess this fund right now? Are you excited not only buy this fund, but to invest in this fund?
Well, looking forward, actually this morning I just attended a meeting in NEDA. The topic was about the UNIDO, United Nations Industry Development Organization Plan, which is the country program of development. And we did not touch on this issue, but at the back of my head, I said, this is the area wherein, if we have done due diligence on what area is needed, that would, let's say, for example, create more jobs. Okay? That's very crucial to us. Or to be able to increase the productivity of agri products, to be more food self-sufficient. So after our meeting, I did talk to NEDA Secretary R.C. Balisacan, and I said that for the private sector, whatever that the government is doing, whether building more roads, more airport, more irrigation system, we need that blueprint to guide us. But there are people who are willing to invest, but we need a blueprint where the heavy lifting is done by the government. It's planned and executed well, and we will ride on it. There are many sectors wherein there's a potential to it, but if the infrastructure is not there, like availability and affordability of power, then that project maybe will just sit in the back burner. But if we see the timeline of some of these projects to be carried out with a certain timeline, we will definitely dovetail with those plans of the government, wherein the ultimate objective is really to create more economic activities, sustainability, and inclusivity. And most importantly is really, during the SONA of the president, he stressed the importance of creating jobs. And he did so during the presentation of Philippine Export Development Plan that was last week. Again, the president realized that the agri sector needs to be further boosted by technology, funds, and infrastructure so that there will be more jobs created, and at the same time, export revenue. During the discussion, it was highlighted that our export is half of what Thailand and Indonesia are exporting. So those are the upside, wherein money can be put in, generating jobs and also economic activities. Again, there's nothing. I cannot say that it's a 100% guarantee. There's no guarantee in life, naman. And investment is just that you put in the right people who are capable, who has the credential to do this sort of things, and definitely I think that would lessen the risk or the concern of the public.
Sir, it's good, actually good that you brought up the Philippine Export Development Plan. I'd like to go a little bit into more detail with that. Well, the objectives, of course, are noble, capitalize on export growth opportunities, current market trends, developing local industries, and so on and so forth. My question would be, what makes it different from all the other plans of all the other administrations in the past? Because it does sound more or less the same. And I guess this is where we look at the nitty-gritty or the details. What essentially makes it unique, or what would make it work this time?
Are you referring to the Export Development Plan?
Yes, sir.
Well, it's pointed out that definitely the DTI with the Bureau of Export Promotion must be beefed up. Okay, we need to promote ourselves more and help the exporters. Many of the exporters, they do produce saleable products, but they still do not have that kind of exposure. Other countries like Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, they have the Thailand, Indonesia houses in New York or in other places. We don't have that. So the promotion of Philippine-made products is required. And of course, the other side of concern is the availability of financing for the smaller players. We have DTI, under DTI, we have SP Corp, no? But their loan to the small businesses are hardly a drop in the bucket. It's about almost 10 billion. While we know very well in the banking sector, that's required by BSP, 15% of that must be of loan portfolio must be allocated for agri and aqua sectors. So all of this come into play. But really, from the narrative of the president and also from what has been presented to him, is that we need to go up the food chain, the value chain. And that requires technology and upskilling of our people in the manufacturing sectors. The area of concern is really the training of our young people to certain sectors that wherein they can be gainfully employed. The fact that this is presented and the private sector supports DTI, Secretary Fred Pascual, and quite often we mentioned that our expectation from DTI is must be backed up by resource and financial support.
Mr. Concepcion, apart from financing, how can the government, as part of this export development plan, how can we boost our export competitiveness, especially in the among the MSMEs? You work with the MSMEs. Are there any particular policies that you want to see as part of this development plan?
Well, if we look at Philippines as Philippines Inc., you define the strategy and what's our core strength, really. If you look at it, where our success has been is really exporting people and exporting our services, whether it's BPO, etc. No? So how do we move from that point? No, if you look at our GDP, the agriculture sector contributes basically only 0.3% to the GDP. Industry contributes about 1.4%. Services is the largest at 3.1%. So where is the problem in this in our country? It's really our agricultural sector, no? And the likes of Cambodia, Vietnam, Myanmar, etc., Indonesia, they're quite strong in agri. Now, if you look at the total land base devoted to agriculture, it's humongous, no? Compared to what is devoted to industry and services, no? And yet the contribution is just 0.3%. So I would focus really in, if we want to solve the poverty problem in this country, we have to focus on agriculture. And that goes down to the basic land problems that we have. And we have been meeting with Secretary Estrella. I've met with the President. We continue to engage in this area. And this is, to me, and that's why I fully support that President Marcos continues to retain his role as Secretary of Agriculture, because if we are able to solve our agriculture in this country, that's the biggest game changer. No? Because you can see service people moving abroad, working abroad, bringing dollars in, that's huge. BPOs, etc., that's huge. Industry, okay, we're growing. We want to expand. So the biggest challenge is our agricultural sector. So if we fix this under the administration of President Marcos, then poverty will go down, jobs will be created. So this is where we have to focus. And the problem is in the land issues. We got to scale up. We got to consolidate these lands so that they become more economically viable for our farmers. And this is now the trust that we're working with Secretary Estrella, of course, the President, and the private sector through CALAP.
Sir, your thoughts and trust in President Marcos, and certainly his prioritization of agriculture seems very clear. But I don't know if this is an unfair reading of it. But it seemed as if that he started by saying agriculture, food security is so important. Prices is something we have to bring down. It's so important to me. Therefore, I will be Secretary of Agriculture muna. But around November, around December, the messaging was already, no, he is already looking for somebody. He's looking for somebody to handle this permanently. And then just a couple of days ago, the statement essentially was that, I'm trying to look, but there are no takers. It seems as if that even Malacanang can no longer ignore the other side of this, where people are saying, we need a permanent, dedicated Secretary of Agriculture for this. We admire the President's passion for this, but it's untenable for him to be managing the whole country and something this important, as you said. Do you feel that this is something that he can sustain? And the same question to you also, Mr. Barcelona.
If my company, if there is a problem in one division, I will take over and concurrently still be the president of our company. Why? Because if that is the problem, we have to get it solved. He has good people. He has Secretary Estrella, who's very important in this role of really transforming our whole agri sector on titling, on etc. So it's a problem, and that's why agri is just contributing 0.3% to GDP. So that is where we have to focus. And if it will require that the president takes the concurrent role as agricultural secretary, I fully support it. Because if we solve that problem and take agri just even to match industry at 1.4%, despite agri having the largest asset base in this country, that is a game changer. So where else will we look? Exports, yeah, great. But how can you export if you're not competitive? So rather than let's export whatever, we're exporting people. What we have to try to do is at least be sustainable with our own critical agri produce, rice, corn, etc. And really make it, give our farmers a chance to have a better life. So this is how, if we want to bring down the level of poverty, it's in this sector. The biggest job generation will be in the agriculture sector. in sector. So there's so many opportunities. So if the private sector jumps and partners with government, and that's what we're trying to do, many of them, from Winston Oy of Universalit down to Christian Moller, all of these people are expanding, and they can expand even faster with our farmers as partners if we clean up the problems in our land issues. And leasing of land will be much easier. Then we will have scale. And once you have scale, you will be competitive. You can export. So we don't need to import rice. We will be an exporter eventually of rice. So if yes, the president can get somebody good, but you need somebody of complete authority. One phone call, everybody assembles. So that's what I call leadership. And I think the president is doing the right thing by taking control of the agriculture position, because this is where the problem of our country is today.
Mr. Barcelon, you agree?
Anne was asking me earlier how the government can help. No? You know, if you look at our agri sector, our proper irrigation system on the average is below 50. Compared to Vietnam and Thailand, they're way about 70 to 80%. So there's one area that irrigation must be improved. Now that ties in hand with the size of the land they're tilling. Based on the agrarian law, they are only given 5 hectares, and that is not economically feasible for investments. One of the advocacy of our organization is to have it at least 24 to 25 hectares. But aside from that, I think other countries are more, in a way, more liberal in allowing foreign investments in their agri sectors. Of course, it doesn't mean that they will give up their patrimonial rights as far as the ownership of the land. No. But they have, the government should allow long-term investments on arable land wherein investment can be put in. Many of the countries like Pakistan, when they visited the Philippines, one of the chamber, I was surprised that they have surplus in rice and corn, and they would like to export to us, except the distance, the logistic with them is quite far. But the other ASEAN neighbors are very aggressive. The Chamber of Myanmar just visited our office the other day, and the discussion, one way or the other, focused on our need of rice and onions. And they said, we have ample supply of this. So the important issue, again, nobody can argue that, agriculture is very basic to the country in its development. We now have any survey will show that the poor are all in the rural poor in the farm areas, and this is something that it hurts especially the marginalized. The cost of living is high. It hurts the industry. Every time the peso fluctuates because we import a lot of our foodstuff, there's clamoring for wage increase. While I compare the other ASEAN countries, because of the stability in their food prices, they're not like us. Every year the labor sector would be asking for wage adjustment. So this is a whole cycle. The agri sectors is very important for us to keep the prices affordable. Okay, and it's hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. One of the issues that is really that needs to be urgently addressed is the malnutrition of the poor. And that is what I'm saying. When I was there, when I was invited in the 1,000 Day of Life, and when I was asked to comment, I said, I represent the private sectors in business, manufacturing, and trade. I think the role that we can play is really for us to expand our business, for us to hire more people, for them to be gainfully employed so that they can feed their family. That's the solution. I know that at present, those who are really suffering malnutrition, wasting, problem of stunted growth, that has to be addressed. But long-term wise, if you look at it, you cannot be always, just giving them assistance when the economy, which is the moving force to generate jobs and decent jobs, for them to earn enough to feed. So I'm fully supporting that whatever it takes in the agri sector, and we can do this scientifically. We met Secretary Solidum of the OST the other day, and we were talking about soil mapping, also the survey on our water level in different areas. I said because those are important for people who wants to invest, and I hope that again, like what Joey was saying, no reason why our productivity on the agriculture is not even keeping in pace with our population increase.
Apa. Okay.
So definitely we will always be having this issue about food.
Sige pa. Okay. Mr. Barcelon and Mr. Concepcion, sir, maraming salamat po sa inyo.
Thank you.
Thank you, sirs.
Salamat rin. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed, Ann, and Robbie. Thank you.
Apa. And Mr. George Barcelon, of course, Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Go Negocio founder Joey Concepcion. And that is all we have for the Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Ed Lingao. We are One News, all sides, all the time.